You have heard of the X Factor. Today, ladies and gents, we have the Sex Factor. Woo! And here we have a wonderful team who are going to give you lots of information to empower you today. The question, why are women losing out in media jobs? More women than men make it into TV and radio in their 20s. The women are better qualified, they work longer hours, and they do more training. But by the time they're 35, 51% of women have left the industry. So, we're not here to depress the hell out of you this morning. We are here to see what we can actually do about it. And I've got 4 amazing women here who are going to tell us about what their organisations can do to help you so that you're not one of the 51%. Now, Kate O'Connor, Kate, could you raise your hand? We've actually got 3 Kates, a Maria and a Miriam, so this could be very confusing. Kate O'Connor there, second from the end of the panel, is the Executive Director of Skillset, which I'm sure most of you know already, but that is the industry's training body. Kate is on every committee possible to help promote people in general and women in particular. You just have to look on the Skillset website to find out all about that. Kate Elliott, who's here on my right, which is left for you, Kate has worked as a freelancer in costume in West End theatre. She's worked all over the UK, she's worked all over Europe as well. Kate was active as a union rep for so many years that Bectu ended up giving her not just 1 job, but 2 jobs. Kate is the national official in the Training and Education Department of Bectu, and she is the Women's Equality Officer. Only a woman, let's face it, could run 2 jobs like that. Maria Williams, Maria is at the extreme end of the panel, is the founder of Sound Women. Now, Sound Women has just started this year. You're amongst the first to hear about it and get all the information about how it can help women in the sound area. Maria's an award-winning producer with 20 years experience in radio production. She created and launched one of my favourite radio shows, Saturday Live with Fee Glover. She was the deputy editor of Women's Hour. Frankly, she has got a mantelpiece crammed with awards. So we will find out what it is that has made her set up a special campaigning and support networking group for women in radio. And last but absolutely not least, we are absolutely thrilled today to have with us Miriam O'Reilly, who won her landmark case against the BBC. She did a very, very brave thing. She was the first person to take a major corporation to an industrial tribunal and win. And any of you who were reading the Sunday Times last Sunday would see that the Director General of the BBC has come out and said, yes, we got it wrong and we're going to do something about it. And that would not have happened but for the bravery of this one woman. Now, where else could you have 45 minutes with amazing people like this to find out how you can best be empowered? Let's start with Kate O'Connor, first of all. Without Skillset, we wouldn't actually have known what the facts were about the industry. We've all heard stories. Everybody hears stories about, you know, women who have lost their jobs and so on. But Kate actually, through all their research department and through their censuses that they do, got the facts. Kate, could you just fill us in broad brushstrokes what the situation is, please?
As Kate has said, I'm here to represent Skillset, and Skillset's the training body for the industry. Our job, and by industry I mean actually all of the creative industries, not just TV and film and radio, but this morning we'll just talk about TV and film and radio. Our job is to make sure the industry has the right people with the right talent in place at the right time. It's very simple, our job, in theory, and quite hard to manage. One of the things we do is to do regular research about how many people are employed in the industry, what they're doing, where they're working, how they're working. And we do that in order to track the kind of skills and talent base we have for the industry. About 3 years ago now, when we'd done one of our regular surveys to find out about how many people were working in the industry, there was a slight downturn in the number of jobs. Usually the industry is growing year on year, but at this particular point in time, there was a downturn. And what was fascinating and really worrying was that the downturn was affecting women disproportionately to men. So 5,000 people had lost jobs in that particular period that we surveyed. And the majority, I mean, by far and away, the majority of those were women. I'm not going to do the stats and the data now because it's not the time or place. But that raised huge concerns for Skillset. So we immediately started talking to key organisations in the industry, like Bectu, like Women in Film and TV, Sound Women weren't born yet. We started to talk about why this might be. And it prompted us to look at other issues to do with women as well in the industry. So as well as the women who had disappeared, we started to look at the demographics of women in the industry. And what we found was really fascinating, that proportionately in the workforce overall, in the economy, in all jobs, in all industries, there's roughly a 50-50 split between men and women working in the industry. When you compare that to our industry, we find that we really have lots more women coming into the industry. We have over-recruited, if you like, lots of bright young women into the industry. But in their 30s, they go. We lose a huge proportion of women, and they don't come back to the industry. And then again, at the age of 45 to 55, that kind of age, again, there's a mass exodus of women leaving the industry. So although we could chart these statistics and also find out that lots of women come into the industry in creative roles, but actually overall they don't stay in those creative and freelance roles. They opt for securer, permanent jobs, or in fact, they potentially leave. We hadn't got the solution or the reasons for why that was. What Skillset could do was paint the picture, which we have. Disproportionate number of women leaving, disproportionate age exodus. Women are, in fact, taking up training opportunities. Women are likely to be more qualified than their male counterparts, and women are likely to work longer hours, be paid less, and actually do more unpaid work. So that's the context that Skillset uncovered through our statistics. In terms of today's session, we really want to move forward the discussion with you and talk about what we can do about that. And Skillset's role is quite specific. We're here to make sure that there's enough training in place, that we're targeting the training at the right people, at the right skills. And so that's what we'll continue to do, working in partnership with all the organisations up here on the platform. We're particularly keen to offer bursaries to women who want to upgrade their skills or move on in their careers, and we'll have a whole new slate of bursaries available in the new financial year from April onwards. We're really keen to get more women into some of the craft and technical jobs where they're woefully underrepresented, and we're working very closely with the Skillset Craft and Technical Academy to make sure that we're attracting, recruiting and training young women in these roles where they're not represented at all. And we're really keen then to work with other partners to make sure that we're out there supporting women returners, the skills that we've lost, the skills that we need, so that women can come back to the industry and develop their skills and develop their careers. And I know there's a whole heap of other issues to do with employment and freelancing and so on that other colleagues will talk about, but Skillset's here passionately and powerfully to help make sure that we maintain the skills base, which is overwhelmingly sourced at women and men, of course, in the industry. And we need to make sure that we're not discriminating against the provision of training for women. So that's me, Kate.
That's great, Kate. And I should also say that Skillset, apart from doing all of the grants and the information, they actually co-fund our fantastic mentoring scheme at Women in Film and Television. So a lot of the organisations in our industry are actually hugely helped by Skillset to do the work that they're doing, apart from the actual the grants and things which are branded purely as Skillset brands. So do look on their website. There's a lot of information there for absolutely everybody. Now, if we could move on to Miriam O'Reilly. Miriam, why on earth, after all that you've been through, and you've gone back and you're making programs again, what made you decide to set up a charity?
Because I found that there were so many women out there who felt that they were being pushed out of the industry. I was almost one of the disappeared that Kate has spoken about, and I didn't want to go. And when I won my case, more and more women got in touch with me and said, I didn't want to go either, but I suddenly developed a face for radio, or my contract wasn't renewed. They wanted to talk to me because they almost wanted to understand what it was that enabled me to stand up for my rights. I said when I won my case against the BBC, I didn't want to be the poster girl for discrimination, but I found that I didn't have an option because of the number of women who got in touch, not just in the industry, but in the armed forces, in banking, in government. I couldn't walk away from them. And these women were growing in numbers. I started talking with them when I went back to the BBC, and then with Camilla Palmer, who was my lawyer, we discussed setting up a safe forum online where women could talk to each other. Because Camilla has been, during her career as an employment lawyer, putting women in touch with each other. Because it is very isolating when you are facing discrimination at work, when things are happening to you that you know are unfair, when you are being pushed out of your job, when you know you're really good at it and there's absolutely no reason for you to go, when you're being marginalized, when you're not being paid the same amount of money that your male counterpart is being paid. There are massive issues out there that need to be addressed, and we feel that by bringing women together, we can empower them. The Women's Equality Network is an online forum where women, as I say, can support each other in confidence. You don't have to give your real name at all. You can blog, you can ask advice, and there is free legal advice there, which is really important. I didn't know my legal rights. I knew that I was being discriminated against because of my age, and when I left Countryfile I was 51. You know, I didn't know where all the older women had gone. There were very few of us. Now this was 2.5 years ago. I mean, the BBC has parachuted a lot of older women in since then, but at the time they kept saying, well, there's Angela Rippon and there's Anne Robinson. Yeah, and who else? And who is there in news and current affairs? Well, there's Maxine Mowini, and then they couldn't think of anybody else. So we felt that we needed to come together. We needed to tell women their rights. We needed also to tell them that they are not alone when they're facing discrimination. You can do something about it. You don't have to go away if you feel that you are not being treated fairly. I'm not saying to you all here, you know, take up arms and march against the broadcasters, but what I'm saying is find out what your rights are, because that way you are empowered to fight it if the day comes when they say, oh, you've got a face for radio. So that's what we're trying to do with the Women's Equality Network. Now, I left the BBC because they hadn't learned the lesson in my case, sadly. I'm determined to go back and fight them for the third time. Lots of things happening behind the scenes, and I was delighted that Mark Thompson, as a result of my case last week, did say that this was the turning point. So I embrace that. I think that's a fantastic start. We've got to go forward with that. We, on Women's Equality Network, are going to hold him to account. And I'm asking everyone here today, it's womensequalitynetwork.org.uk. You can go online and in confidence, you can talk to us about your experiences in the industry, ask us for help, and we will be there and we will give it to you. I'm asking women to come together so we can say to Mark Thompson and other broadcasters, we're watching you. Make good your promises, and particularly the BBC. Now you've said it, you have to make good your promises for women. And that's what the Women's Equality Network is going to do, in a nutshell.
Thank you, Miriam. So everybody has now got to, when they leave here, look up the Women's Equality Network, find out more, and give it your support. Another fantastic organisation which has just arisen this year through another woman's incredible passion for her job is Sound Women. Now, Maria, why on earth, in the middle of doing all your freelance work in radio and dusting your huge collection of awards, why would you want to set up an organisation like this?
It was the Sony Radio Academy Awards. I don't know being TV people, whether you've ever been to this. They're the kind of big, glitzy equivalent of the Oscars for the radio industry. And it was May last year. I went, I sat there, I saw lots of women on stage. I didn't see many women actually getting awards. They were all handing out the awards. And what really troubled me, it was dubbed the Year of the Lad the day after by The Guardian. Danny Baker, Frank Skinner, brilliant men won awards, and I wouldn't knock their talent for a moment. They should be up there. But what really troubled me was the fact that so few women were even nominated. You look through category after category, and we just weren't there. And I just sat back and thought, why is this? You know, is it that we're not good enough? Is it that we're not trying hard enough? Is it that there are kind of barriers in the way somehow that we're not really tackling appropriately? So I went off, I gathered together some wonderful radio women from all corners of the radio industry. So we had commercial radio, community radio, BBC, Skillset, and just basically got everyone in a room together and just said, what do you think? You know, am I going mad? This is not looking good. And after 2 hours, and quite a lot of pastries, we left with a name, a kind of mission, and a shared bond. Kate was at that first meeting and said, I'll go and do some research for you. And when we looked at the radio figures, there were a lot of parallels with the TV figures, but some differences too. We find in radio, again, lots of women, very highly qualified women come in. We find lots of women leave around the age of 35. Even with a face for radio, there aren't that many older women in radio. There are more. But one of the kind of most striking differences was women find it easier to stay. Not so many women leave as they do in TV. And I think that's partly because the way we're set up. If you work for a radio station, then actually you're based in one place. And the hours and the shifts might be odd, but actually that's an awful lot easier than having to go to Mexico on location for 6 weeks shooting something. So there are some practical things about the industry that make it slightly easier for women to stay. But when you look at the hierarchy, women just fall off as you go up, to the point where in TV, about 29% of people at board level or equivalent are women. In radio, it's just 17%. So the women who fight to stay do worse. So what are we doing at Sound Women? We've been going a little bit longer than Kate says. It's about 8 months now, but we're still very new, given that Women Film and TV have been going for 21 years. So we're running to catch up and have taken lots of our cues from them. And the main thing we want to do is make this an organisation, and it's a free organisation to join at the moment. You know, it's just about people signing up, but it's to make it a really positive, playful organisation in many ways. We really want to celebrate the work that all these amazing women in audio do. So it's not just radio, actually, it's people women in audio. So if you're making podcasts, if you're the boom operator, then you know you are welcome, although we are predominantly, at the moment, our membership is women in radio. And what we're trying to do is celebrate the work that women do. Where we put something together called the 200 list when we started, which was just 200 women we thought were doing amazing things. And everyone from kind of Norwegian producers making kitchen noise dramas to women absolutely at the top of their game, whether in presenting, Zoe Ball's joined up, French and Saunders have joined up, or in production, women who've started their own production companies like Karen P from Folded Wing, been very, very successful. And the 200 list was partly to say, look, you know, we can do this. There are women doing amazing things, so that women coming through have role models and can, when you come to an event like this, actually see some women on the platform. The radio festival happens every year, and last year, I think it was either 12 or 15%, I can't remember which, of speakers were women. You know, there was panel after panel of very highly qualified men in very nice suits talking about radio. And I sat next to one of my kind of colleagues from an indie I used to work with, and she just looked at me and said, it's not for people like me, this industry, is it? And that unconscious signal, I think, that you're not welcome, all these things just make it harder when you do hit the wall. If you're 35 and whether it's because of children or all sorts of other reasons, you just kind of feel stuck and a bit isolated. Things like that really make a difference. Feeling like the industry wants you, should be fighting to keep you. So we've done many things. We've got the 200 list, so trying to get more women more visible at events like this. We've got the research, which is really useful in showing the areas we want to tackle. We're really setting up networking groups and having events. We had our first event a couple of weeks ago with Annie Nightingale, talking to a room full of women in this wonderful grand University Women's Club in Mayfair, which is very unlike most radio stations, very modern. So to be surrounded by kind of chandeliers and slightly shabby, wonderful wallpaper was great. Because I think for lots of women, networking is seen as something that's a bit of an indulgence. You know, I think we're quite good at always staying late, always being busy, doing our work wonderfully and hoping somebody will notice us. Well, actually, you need to get out there. You need to go, look, I'm good at this, and meet other women doing the same things and swap ideas and be inspired by each other and find out about jobs. How are you going to find out what's out there if you never speak to anybody in your industry?
Okay, well, we've heard about some of the great initiatives this morning that are happening in our industries at the moment. And one of the things we really need to do is look at how we can pull all this major work together. I won't speak for long because we are really keen to hear ideas from the floor. But I've personally been involved in discussions for the last few years, beginning with the Bird's Eye View Film Festival in early 2008, when we debated if it was possible to make films and have babies at the same time. And it was agreed that it was fine as long as there wasn't a cost implication, which inevitably in the short term there is. But how much greater is the cost in the long term when we lose all these very talented women? The title of today's discussion came from research carried out in 2010 by Skillset, showing that more women enter with higher qualifications, and we've heard all this. And our question today is, what actions do we need to address this loss of female talent? And we've identified some of the issues about the portrayal of women on screen and throughout the media in general, which has a broader implication in the society that we live and work in. The organisation of work within the media industry, the patterns of work, the freelance nature, the casualisation, the structure of hours, the expectations, long hours, too many people trying to win too few jobs, the lack of ability to have a balanced life. Bectu carried out a survey of its female members last year, and a very large proportion of those members cited their need to work as a reason for not having children, as they simply felt that they couldn't do both. We need to raise awareness of these issues, and we really need to work together on this. One way is by holding sessions such as today, not only to interpret and discuss, but to actually mobilise and to change some things. We're here to challenge the status quo and to propose alternatives that will work for this industry. We know there's an issue. We need to have a plan of action for what we want to happen. Some of this action has already begun. We can lobby Parliament, we can hold meetings, we can create websites, we can draft policy documents, and we can create laws. We need to do all of the above, but we need to do it together. I really think that at the moment it definitely feels like there's a sea change going on. There's a recognition from the great and good, as has been acknowledged today, that something needs to change. I never thought I'd agree with Nadine Dorries, but she raised some difficult and important questions, and she's demanded some answers in Parliament, and she's being taken seriously. And we hear from Miriam and from Maria about the networks for women to make the change together, which is why we're all here today. My own working background isn't in media, as Kate said, it's in technical theatre, and here the issues are exactly the same, and they are also being challenged. A group has set up called Wise Women, Women in Stage Entertainment, an excellent initiative. I first became involved with Bectu, my trade union, because of inequalities at work, and my union gave me fantastic support. I read a report in The Guardian yesterday about the present problems faced by the Greek people, saying that trade unions didn't appear overnight. They were a response to exploitation, and this continues to be the case. We are here to work with you all to bring about that change and to stop exploitation. We are here to stand up for people in the workplace, and we make no apology for this. We are the first port of call and the first line of defence, and we are a vehicle for taking action. If we are to do this for you, we need you all to be members of Bectu. We negotiate pay rates on your behalf. We look after you at work. When we can't help you ourselves, we can pass you on to our lawyers who can help you. We host a yearly women's conference when women come together to discuss their working lives. And we have a full training programme to help you to be the best freelancer that you possibly can, to get that all-elusive job. Our creative toolkit stand is right next to this producers' theatre here, offering information, advice and guidance to new entrants. And I think there might be a lot of new entrants and students here today. So please, please go next door and speak to myself and my colleagues. We'll be there all day. So we look to the future and we hope that you'll be part of it with us. Thank you very much.
Now, at this point, do you have your questions ready? Where's the microphone?
Jerome Silva. I'm a freelance PD. I'd just like to ask the panel, and perhaps particularly Miriam, how do you feel about the fact that women at the top don't necessarily seem to be doing that much to help other women stay in the industry?
But there are so few women in top jobs, and they've had to fight hard to get there. And I have never found women in those top jobs particularly sympathetic to women facing the sort of situation that I was in, because they usually trot out, well, if you were good enough, you'd survive. I mean, we know that that is not true. So I wish it were different, but you know, it's women like us that have to make the change. And you know, I do believe that you cannot wait for someone else to do it for you. You have to do it for yourself. You've got to know your rights, and you've got to be prepared, and particularly in this economic climate, if you want to keep your job, to stand up for your rights. And I feel that women have been afraid to do that and have always looked to other women to do it for them. I mean, there are women standing before you today that will do as much as they possibly can. But in the end, you know, it comes down to you as individual women.
Because for us, it's not actually, I think sometimes people see it as a man versus woman issue. And that's very much not the case for sound women. There are men who are brilliantly helpful. There are women who are very unhelpful, and vice versa. So for us, it's very simply about equality. It's about right, wrong. We have lots of men proud to be members of Sound Women. Tim Davey, who's head of radio at the BBC, wears his I'm a Sound Woman badge with pride around the office, and has done since our launch. So it's actually, yeah, I agree with Miriam. You know, it's very much about everybody taking individual responsibility for this issue. Because can I just say also though, you know, if you're a man working in this industry, wouldn't you rather work in mixed teams? You know, isn't it more fun for everybody, more balanced? Doesn't the audience benefit if there is a mix, if our production teams are diverse in the same way that our audiences are diverse?
Well, Kate, if you can't work in a mixed team, you can't work in the industry, really. But to get back to what you were saying about top people, we have found some fantastic mentors for our mentoring scheme, the one that is funded by Skillset. As a result of those figures, we set up a mentoring scheme for women who had been in the industry for a while, who had been doing very well, and we thought how best to keep more women in after the age of 35 than to get them a really good mentor and do a great scheme. And we have had top men in the industry, including, you know, controller of BBC One as a mentor, and people are often surprised about that. But if you speak to successful women, they will often say that it's been a man who's helped them. And it shouldn't really surprise us if you think of the two words, Margaret and Thatcher.
People feel afraid, don't they, because they think they'll be, you know, tarnished, and that's the end of them. And perhaps, you know, if you're not in a position where you're exposed and well known, it's harder.
And that's why I'm saying know your rights, because, you know, sometimes you don't have to be strident and militant. I may sound a little like it today because I'm kind of want to rally you all to know that you do have rights, learn them, and then you can negotiate, I think, a lot better in the workplace if you know what your rights are. And I would say, you know, and I've mentioned this before, the feminist Gloria Steinem said we've got to get angrier. Well, I just think that women have got to get braver.
I also think that it is very useful to be part of a network. For example, I think in the freelance world now, people feel very much on their own. As a freelancer, you can't just go and have a one-to-one talk with a commissioner or whatever. But if you were to join other networking groups, whether it's Directors UK, whether it's Sound Women, Women in Film and TV, whatever it is, you can get access and empower yourself through being one person in a group. It's that old thing about, united we are stronger, and it's the basis on which trade unions like Bectu were based in the first place. You've got to be a collective and not just an individual sometimes.
And I mean, just briefly, a lot of women have said to me, I have an issue, but I can't go to HR. I can't speak to my boss because then it will become a problem for me, perhaps, and they're afraid of that. And they feel that there is no one that they can speak to resolve that issue for them. And that's the time when it escalates or can escalate. So it is brilliant to know that there are mentors, that Skillset, Women in Film and Television, Bectu and Sound Women are there to help you. Just get in touch with us. We want to hear from you.
Just a quick question. How did you first enter the industry, and at that time, did you even think about these sort of issues that you were going to face as you got older?
Who are you directing that one to?
Anyone?
Oh.
Do you know, I got a really great tweet from a young woman working in radio when we launched. In fact, I had two. I had one from a student saying, I don't need you at the moment, but thank you. I'm really glad you're there. I'm glad you've got my back, which I thought was great. And then I got another tweet from a woman a little bit further down the line who just said, I love radio. I love my job. I'd really rather not have to give it up in 10 years' time. So it is an issue, actually, that people are now thinking out right at the very beginning. And I think that's only good. I mean, I said to our panellists when we were having a quick cup of coffee beforehand, gender is hot right now, which sounds a bit ridiculous, but it really is. You know, suddenly Ed Vaizey, the broadcasting minister, is debating this in the House of Parliament. So it's brilliant that it's an issue. I think that, women at whatever level of the industry you're in, if we're aware of this, if we know where to go for support, if we, like Miriam, if you can see it coming, you're much better able to deal with it than if you blindly go into it thinking the world is a happy, lovely place. You know, media's tough, whether you're male, female, old, young. But, there are particular groups that can benefit from networking and talking to each other.
Absolutely, and I think workplaces are going to be more conducive to women asking questions about their futures and resolving problems for them before it escalates. I really do think that things will get better.
I think also, Celia, you were saying you're a freelance researcher. It's very, very useful to find out what commissioners want and to learn how to pitch. And a lot of organisations, including my own, do pitching sessions. In fact, one of our mentees went up to Sheffield to pitch for the first time in her life at the Dockfest and won 10k from the Wellcome Trust, just on the basis that she had been empowered and had the confidence in her idea and pitching herself and the idea. So I think, if you look at yourself as a freelancer, you're a researcher, nobody is going to be advertising a job for you. Let's face it, where do you ever see, researcher wanted in the pages of Broadcast or Screen or the Media Guardian? You just don't find them anymore. You've got to get out, network. You have got to have your business card. Ideally, you could have your website, get your showreel of shows that you worked on, and just get yourself out there. We can only really empower ourselves, and the organisations you see in front of you are here to help you with it, but ultimately, it's you, yeah?
I'm not based in London, so everything is kind of very London-centric. Are you organisations further up north, say Manchester?
Is it Manchester you're based in?
Liverpool, but Liverpool. I move around. It's just not London anyway.
Well, I think because it's a very London-centric industry, although I think a huge number of people are moving to Salford and there's a lot going on in Glasgow. I think, we'll just pick up here on Bectu. Do you have something in Liverpool?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that with my other hat on, when I'm not the Bectu Women's Equality Officer, I work in the training department. And just to say that we have a network of what we call learning organisers all around the country. In Manchester, we have a project in Scotland, in Wales, in the southwest, and we try to replicate our London courses all around the country. We have a learning organiser in Manchester who does actually cover Liverpool, and one of the things that we try to do as an added benefit to Bectu membership is that we offer incredibly cost-effective one-day training courses around such things as pitching and presenting, interview skills, CV skills, and most of those courses come out at £50 a day, which is really affordable. So please have a look on our website for information about those.
We're rolling Sound Women out absolutely across the whole country, because I think networking is such a critical part of what we're doing, setting up groups, you know, in Liverpool, Glasgow, everywhere. Especially if you're a freelance, I think it's so difficult, isn't it, just to meet people and have proper mentoring kind of relationships with them at a distance. So we're definitely trying to do that.
And just to say, training's available throughout the UK, and we've got people on the ground to help point people to the right training provision, and excellent training providers throughout the UK as well.
Does that answer your question? Yeah. Right.
My question is for Kate O'Connor from Skillset. I just wanted to know, the researchers are showing that women around 35 are leaving the industry, but what about starting up? Because I'm heading to the 30s and I'm still trying to get my foot in the industry, especially in film and TV drama. And I'm finding really hard to get the first opportunity as a first AD or production manager. I find that it's very male-centered roles. So I just wanted to know what your thoughts are on it.
Well, I mean, I've heard that kind of situation a lot. The great thing, but I wanted to say earlier on, the great thing about this issue is that while women might feel worried or isolated or a bit fearful about raising some of these issues, the really dry, boring statistics that Skillset's produced should enable them to feel more empowered about that, because this isn't just an issue that people are imagining, it's real. You know, statistically, really, we have got problems about women leaving the industry, and issues about women migrating into different types of jobs. So I just wanted to say that, because sometimes the power comes from knowing that you're not alone, and that bravery is therefore just a collective business argument. However, having said that, our statistics show that we actually have more women entering the industry than men. So statistically, it's interesting, because it seems to be that more women are coming into the industry, are securing those first jobs and so on. But the issue seems to be later on in their careers, when they try and juggle staying in the industry, freelancing perhaps, with other commitments.
Can I make a suggestion? There is a woman production manager who runs an organisation called the Unit List, and actually there are more women than men production managers, so your perception for once may be slightly skewed. But if you look up the Unit List on Google, it's a woman called Jude Winstanley, and she runs the Unit List completely free. She was on our panel on Tuesday, brilliant woman, and I'm sure she'll be able to give you advice and help about work.
Separate to the issue about women, I mean, it's so hard. It is just so hard to get your first job, your first foot in the door. There's lots of advice out there, including the advice that Skillset gives on our website and through various organisations. So I think seek that advice. It doesn't appear to be an issue, a gender issue at entry level.
Can I just say something on that point as well? Because I've experienced, first of all, the same that you've experienced. Yeah. I am a high-end fashion producer. I'm photography. And a lot of the things that I've seen in photography, especially the more high-end you get, the more advanced and established people get in their careers, the less women there are. So you have, at the beginning, you have a 60-40 split. Exactly. 60% women. Yeah. And then the more established things get and the higher quality things get, all the women suddenly fall away.
Yeah.
And now, what I've experienced, and I might be wrong in this, is that it's not necessarily the quality of work that prevails, but the aggression in which the work is marketed. That means that the high quality work gets through, but it tends to be high quality work of more aggressive people that gets through.
Right.
Do you have the same kind of experience in TV and film?
I mean, sorry, what you've just described is exactly what the statistics show, that's exactly the issue, that women tend to leave for whatever reason, and we don't know precisely why that is, whether it's family commitments, whether it's incompatibility with family commitments and freelancing, or whether it's about assertiveness / aggression or skills, whatever the issue. We're doing more research on that to find out why we're losing women at that particular juncture. But I suspect that is a contributory factor, and that is precisely why Skillset's now looking into doing more training, networking events, mentoring and so on, specifically for women, specifically targeting those kind of training opportunities at women. But colleagues from the industry might have a greater insight into that.
I would say it's very, very parallel to other kind of powerful industries. If you look at the law, if you look at politics, if you look at the city, the media culture is very similar. Even though people in the media think that they're incredibly liberal, that they are not ist in any way, but the actual facts would show differently. We are having to wind up now, sadly, because it's the end of the session, and I'm sorry we didn't get more questions in. But what I would say to you is that however you're feeling, you're not alone as a freelancer. There are lots and lots of organisations for you to join. Bectu's stand is in row M. Women in Film stand is N34, and they've put us beside the big cranes. I'm not even going to use the word phallic, but Women in Film are beside the biggest one of them. We have got free chocolates, and I'm sure that Bectu has as well, because as we all know, women need chocolate, but we also need support. We need networking. Get on Google, look up Skillset, look up Women's Equality Network, look up Sound Women, look up Bectu, and look up Women in Film and TV, and come to some of our events and join in. Thank you very much indeed for being here.